Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, some shop-made spring clamps. Now when I say spring clamps, usually that implies that there's a spring involved. But with this design, it's a very simple design that gets its spring from rubber bands. So the biggest part of the design, or the biggest part of the project, is actually the layout of it. But once you do the layout once, you will have a pattern that will be good right across the board for whatever size you want to make. So let's head over to the bench and we'll start laying this out. Well, we're going to start off by making a pattern for these clamps. And once you get the pattern made, you can adjust it for whatever size you like. So the few tools that we're going to use for that will be a ruler, and we will have a small French curve, and as well, one of my other favorites in the shop, a circle template. And we will start off with a small piece of MDF or hardboard. This is 3 inches by 4 inches, and I have glued on using spray adhesive some paper. That is mostly to make it clear here for the show. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mark center lines on both the horizontal and vertical surface. The first thing that we're going to start off with are the handles of our spring clamp. So I have placed a mark here at 1 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom, and we'll have to get our circle template now, and I'm not sure exactly which one we're going to use here when I turn around so I can read the measurements. Let's do 7/8, just because I feel like it. So at 7/8, we're just going to do basically the top half of the circle. We don't need the whole thing, but there you go. That will be the top arch of our handles. And from there, we need to measure out at the bottom and we'll draw connecting lines. So we're going to measure in a 1/2 inch from each bottom edge. We'll measure in a 1/2 inch in, just like this. And once we get those marks done, we will join them with wherever they intersect with our half circle that we just drew. Well, on this pattern, our handles are going to be 1/2 inch thick. So we will place a mark here at 1/2 inch out from our lines that we just drew, and then we're going to draw a second one at 1/2 inch. And we'll do the same on the opposite side. 1/2 inch here, and then 1/2 inch here. And then we'll join those together. Just like that. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to curve those pieces. We don't want them flat and straight like that. So I'm going to use my French curves, and I'm just going to line it up here. I'm not even sure how. There we go. Maybe something like that. So you've seen me use the technique before. I'm going to mark my French curve with masking tape, and that way I'll be able to duplicate it on both sides. There we go. And then by turning it over and lining up our masking tape on the other side and lining it up with the bottom of our board, I'll do this right-handed here. blocking your view. Sorry about that. We'll just draw that here. And by using that masking tape method, you're able to duplicate it. And there is the bottom of our handles for our spring clamp completed. Now I've drawn a horizontal line here that is 1/4 of an inch up from our center line. So between the top of our circle that we drew here and this line we just drew, this gives us a 1/2 inch. And that will be the thickness of the center pivot part of our clamp. So from our center line out to the left, or you could go to the right if you want, whatever you like, we're going to put a mark. Let me just line up my ruler there. We're going to put a mark at 3/8 of an inch, right there. And once we get that mark, we're going to take a 5/8 of an inch circle template. We're going to line it up with the edge of that mark and centered, and then between the end of our clamp and the top line that we just drew to show the top of our clamp, we're going to put a radius. Just like that. And that will represent the pivot point of our clamps. I have now drawn a line 3 inches up from the top, drawn it horizontally across our clamp, and I've measured in 3/8 of an inch from each edge and placed a mark. And at that point, right at that mark, we are going to place a 3/8 inch circle. We just place our template there, just like that. And then we will do the same on this side, like that. We will now place a mark from the top down horizontally at a 1/2 inch. And I went a little crooked there. That's okay. We don't need that long of a line. This is going to represent the pads of our clamp right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our circle template again. And I believe I want to use, let's go 1.25 inches. Just to mark the center line, I'm going to come down at 1/4 inch. I'm going to place a mark at 1/4 inch there. And I'm going to use that 1.25 inch template to line up with our center mark. I'm just going to turn it sideways here so I can see it a little better without getting my fat head in the way of the camera. 1.25 inch template, and we're going to draw the arc represented in that 1/2 inch space. Now you want to leave a little bit of room in between because we're going to have to cut this with a scroll saw afterwards. Well, now it's time to draw out the pivots of our clamp. So this line that we drew right here at 2.25 inches, that will be our starting point. So I'm just going to finagle it here with my French curves to get ourselves a nice sweeping curve here from the top of our clamp to our little 3/8 circle that we drew. And before I mark it, I'm just going to mark with my masking tape where it is that this needs to be lined up. So we'll place one piece here for the center line. There we go, like that. And another piece for our horizontal center line. Line it up the top. And now with the bottom, oops. And once you're happy with that layout, we will join the line from the top of our arc that we just drew to our 3/8 inch circle. And then repeat it on the other side. And now using masking tape on our French curves again, we will just line up our French curve the way that we want it, and we will complete the arc of our clamp. Just like that, and then we'll repeat it on the opposite side. You can see where that masking tape really helps for lining things up and getting duplicates, getting it exactly the same. It's so fast and easy. There we go. So that is the outside curves of our clamp, and we just want to round this off now. We don't want it so sharp. So let's see, what size do I want to use? I'll use a 5/8 again. And we're just going to join the edges between our handles and the arc that we just drew. There you go, just to round that off. So the last thing that we want to do now is we want to do this inside arch that will join this all together. So once again with our French curves, we're going to line it up. We're going to set up our masking tape so that we can duplicate it on two sides, and we'll just draw our lines. Now honestly, I'm not really liking this sharp corner, so it's no big deal. We're going to take that 1¼ inch template again, and we're just going to round it off. So wherever those two marks intersect, that is where we are going to round it off, just like that. So we'll line these up just like this. Where do they intersect? Right there. All right, and there is essentially our spring clamp design, or our spring clamp pattern. So what do we do with it at this point? Well, I'm going to go around with an eraser and clean up some of these lines. And before I do any cutting or anything else of the nature, I'm going to take this inside, I'm going to scan it and print out several copies so that I don't destroy my original when I'm cutting out my spring clamps. So with our pattern scanned and printed, I have applied spray adhesive and let it tack up for 3 minutes, and then I'm just placing the pattern down onto a piece of 1/2 inch plywood. And now we can head over to the scroll saw. And now using a smaller blade on the 1/2 inch ply, in this case it's a number 3, we're going to carefully cut this out, remembering that we need to cut right through this radius here that we drew earlier. So I'll cut it out and then I'll show you what's next. With our pattern removed from both pieces, we're just going to give it a light sanding on both sides and just a little bit around the corners, just to knock off that sharp edge. We don't want to take too much out of our center cut profile here in the middle. You know, just smooth it out to make sure that there's no rough edges, and then we can get into the, well, assembly, if you want to call it that. Now, as far as assembly goes on these clamps, it couldn't be easier. You place your clamp together back into one piece, hold it, and take an elastic band and just double it over into those little 3/8 holes that we marked. And there, boys and girls, is your clamp. You want a little extra pressure than that? If that's not enough for you, not a problem. Just hold it together, and if you want, triple the rubber band over or get a stronger rubber band. Quadruple it if you want to. Here we go. We'll try to quadruple it. So that's 3 wraps, and there's the 4th into those notches. Wow, and that's got some pretty good strength to it. So there you go. That's pretty spectacular. And there you have it. Shop-made spring clamps. Guys, this design could not be simpler. It could not be easier to make, and it could not be more useful. The versatility of it is unbelievable because depending on what type of clamp you need, this simple little 3x4" clamp that we did, this little mini, enlarge it. You want bigger? Make bigger. You want smaller? Make smaller. You want less tension? Use weaker rubber bands. You want more tension? Triple or quadruple up the band or use stronger rubber bands. Completely, it's adjustable. It's completely adjustable to whatever you want. I made this out of scraps of 1/2" ply. And you can see from these bigger ones, I made these out of scrap 3/4. Same principles apply. If you're going to make multiples, I would suggest making a template. Unless you don't mind spraying and gluing patterns down to make multiples of things, it's up to you. But marking out with a template, versus having to clean up the glue residue and all of that, it may be worth it for you. Depends on how many you want to make. What if you made a bunch for your woodworker friends on your gift list? Maybe you'd want a template then. Either way, guys, this is a great project and I hope you're going to try it. There's something about shop-made tools that are just satisfying. There's something about making a project, let's say a model, and reaching over there and grabbing one of your shop-made clamps that you whipped off yourself and it works so well. There's just something about it. I can't explain it, but it is so satisfying, and it's what makes us woodworkers. It's what makes us so that we don't have to purchase the commercially available ones. It's made out of scrap with a rubber band. You can get the rubber bands from your local mail carrier for nothing, and you can find scrap for nothing. Heck, as long as you run the grain along the length of the clamp, make it out of pallet wood if you want. It doesn't matter. There's always scrap somewhere that you can make it. You can make dozens of these for free. Guys, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe and click the bell so that you don't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. I hope you've enjoyed this project. It's a simple one, but it's so useful, so useful. I hope you're going to try this for yourself, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video. Guys, if you have stuck in here to the end, I want to thank you for that. Why don't you drop me a line over at my Facebook page, or you can send me an email at acutabove_woodworking@hotmail.com, and I would be more than happy to send you the PDF scan of the original layout that I did on today's show. That way you don't have to do the drawing. All you have to do is print it up. Just my way of saying thank you for hanging in until the end. See you next week.